Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
Yep, you know, you and I have talked about this many, many times, but it bears repeating, because it's still true. If you are largely talentless, if you are uninteresting, if you are, well, hungry for power but don't enjoy all the hard work that it takes to get some of that power, politics is a great move. If you're talentless and uninteresting and want power but don't like hard work, politics, that's an easy way to get there. Can't write a song? You could still get the acclaim of a rock star in some people's eyes. If you're not able to create something that entertains everybody else, you can still figure out a way to have massive amounts of people gather in one place just to listen to what you've got to say. You can still get up in front of an audience and have them cheer you on, even if you're kind of a dullard. Politics has always been great for that, and it attracts a certain type of person. And, well, that was made extraordinarily obvious yesterday when a guy called, do you know this guy? Do you hear about this guy? I bring this up because we spent so much time yesterday on the show talking about Alex Jones and InfoWars being taken off of YouTube and Apple and Facebook. But are you aware of Chris Murphy? Chris Murphy is a guy who I don't really know too much about him. I know he's a Democrat from Connecticut. And by the way, you and I have talked about this numerous times on the show, but Republican, Democrat, it's Coke and Pepsi to me. It's brown, sugary water that's not good. That's not that good for you, that you should probably avoid at all costs. I'm not a side taker. I refuse to declare an allegiance to any particular party because, well, it doesn't really make you that nimble in terms of making the right decisions at the right times to line up and run alongside your morals comfortably. So I avoid going, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or anything of that nature because, like I said, it's Coke and Pepsi to me. It's brown, sugary water that ultimately is bad for you. You should drink as little of it as possible. But there's a guy called Chris Murphy who's a Democratic senator, I believe, from Connecticut. And like I said, I don't know a whole lot about what he's done in the past. But that whole, if you're not that interesting, if you want power but don't want to work for it, if you feel like something is owed to you but you haven't quite earned it, the actions that he took yesterday with regard to Alex Jones and InfoWars and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all of the above sort of make him, in my mind, the archetype of the type of guy that falls into politics. Now, you and I discussed at length yesterday the deal with Alex Jones. And you might be a fan of Alex Jones. I know that, well, I was very surprised to find out that I had as much crossover. We're not conspiracy theorists around here. I mean, and to be fair, I don't really know what Alex Jones is talking about most of the time. I'm on like 25 radio stations, and I would love to listen. I would love to know more about what my contemporaries are talking about, but I don't have time. At the end of the day, I got to do this show and then 5 other shows, and then I got to find a time to eat and sleep and walk Millhouse, my puppy, and, well, it doesn't leave time for extended listening to the Alex Joneses of this world, so I don't really know exactly what he's talking about. But I do know that a lot of people that listen to Alex Jones seem to listen to this show as well. And my email inbox exploded. People saying they're taking away free speech. This is the beginning of the end. AD, you have to expose the truth. And if you recall, if you were around yesterday for the show, you probably know that the truth, I think, is that, guess what? Facebook don't have any responsibility to hold up the idea of free speech. Facebook are not something that we have any say in. Facebook is not something that we voted on. Facebook has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than Mark Zuckerberg, the people who work for him, and Facebook shareholders. They get to do what the hell they want, when the hell they want, within the confines of the law. It's not their job to uphold free speech. And so, for that reason, without even knowing exactly what it was that Alex Jones did to get him banned from Facebook and YouTube and the Apple podcast page. It's sort of down to them. They get to do what they want to do. This is the free market. And this is freedom. This is them exercising their right to do business in America the way they feel is best for them and for their shareholders. And for that reason, I really can't fault their decision to bounce whoever they want to off of their platform, because it's not an issue of rights and free speech. It's an issue of a person conducting business the best way they see fit. That was where we landed on the whole thing yesterday. But this guy, Chris Murphy, ooh, he's really trying to run with the ball in the way that a nominally useless politician would in these circumstances. We'll get into it next.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
You know what the whole situation with this Chris Murphy guy reminds me of? You know what it seems very reminiscent of? Reminds me of when Mark Zuckerberg went to testify, which obviously didn't happen that long ago. But do you recall exactly how that went down? The idea was Mark Zuckerberg was going to get raked over the coals with regard to that Cambridge Analytica thing. Bunch of user information had been sold off and data privacy issues were all up in this piece. And then obviously there was this idea that thanks to data privacy issues and data not being protected by Facebook and Cambridge Analytica doing what they did with that data, that the shape of the election was influenced. And it was supposed to be like this giant come to Jesus thing with regard to Zuckerberg, Facebook, and all of that. But what it wound up being was a bunch of old crotchety, out of touch politicians basically going, what is the internet? What is a Facebook? We were supposed to have all the money and power. How come this kid in the hoodie has all the money and power? We signed up for all the money and power, yet he seems to have more influence over society than we do. That doesn't seem right. Is it cold in here? I'm cold. Why do I need a Facebook? I like normal books. Why do I have to like Werther's Original Butterscotch on Facebook when I like them in person? Can I pay for the internet with a check? That's what it wound up being. And, well, that whole, how does this kid have all the money and power? He wasn't doing anything a few years ago. We've been working on being politicians forever. That argument seems very sort of reminiscent of this Chris Murphy guy. Like we were saying, politicians, these are folks oftentimes, look, I mean, obviously, I don't want to paint everybody with this brush. There are politicians that genuinely want to serve the public. They want to be those public servants. They recognize that you and me, it's us that's paying their taxes. It's us that they work for. It's us that they answer to. There are some of those folks out there, and I'm not trying to take away from them, but I think the vast majority of politicians, even if they do get into politics with this idea that they're going to serve the public, wind up being, just kind of biding my time, shuffling papers, making myself look as busy as possible until I can retire. I think there's a lot of folks that wind up doing that. And then, even worse, they're the ones that feel like they deserve to be famous. They feel like they deserve riches. They feel like they deserve money, power, fame, intrigue, interest, acclaim, all of the above, but they're not that bright. They're not that smart. They're not that interesting, and they've got very little to contribute to the world. And if you're one of those people that feels like the world needs to stand up and recognize you, but there's really no reason why the world should, well, then politics is an easy way to circumvent that whole thing where you're an idiot without talent. And what Chris Murphy said is so reminiscent of that idea, hey, we were supposed to have all the money and power. How come this kid has all the money and power? Outcome when Zuckerberg was testifying. Because, well, the reason he's taken all this heat at the moment is because he went online after Facebook and YouTube and Apple bounced Alex Jones and InfoWars from their platforms and said, I know Facebook and Apple and YouTube have gotten so big that sometimes they seem like the government, but they aren't. They are private companies that shouldn't knowingly spread lies and hate. They took a good first step today by removing InfoWars. InfoWars is the tip of a giant iceberg of hate and lies that uses sites like Facebook and YouTube to tear our nation apart. These companies must do more than take down one website. The survival of our democracy depends on it. Yeah. It's the very first line that really tipped me off to the rest of it being garbage. I know Facebook and Apple and YouTube have gotten so big that sometimes they seem like the government, but they aren't. It's that, well, there's probably a more sophisticated term for this, but I would just call it straight up jealousy. What the hell, man? I'm a politician. I'm supposed to have the money, the power, the will of the people. And I know Facebook and Apple and YouTube have gotten so big that some people think they're the government, but they're not. We are. I'm going to stamp my feet about all the power that I don't have because some bright sparks with computers managed to make their way in the world more efficiently than I have. That's what it smacks of. And then if you're like me, you find what he said after that to be so contradictory of the idea that they seem like government. He said they're private companies that shouldn't knowingly spread lies and hate. They need to do more. Our democracy depends on it. No, it doesn't. They're in business. There are, as you said, private companies. You know what private companies have a responsibility to do? Nothing other than what they see fit. If they decide it is the right thing to do for their company, for their company's set of moral values, their internal code, if you will, if they decide that bouncing someone like Alex Jones and InfoWars from their platform, if that's the right way for them to go, well, they're private companies. As long as they're acting within the confines of the law, they get to do that. But let's not get it twisted. Just because the world is somehow unfair in your favor, just because they are removing a propaganda machine that hurts your chances of getting reelected, does not give you the right to go, all right, I'm in the government. Here's a list of other things that need to go. You don't get to have these things both ways. It's like the whole concept of freedom and the free market economy and all the above. The people that were screaming that this is the end of free speech and Facebook need to be forced to reinstate Alex Jones because this was a matter of free speech. No, it's not. It's a matter of a company doing business freely in America. And the idea that, okay, that's a decent start. Now you need to do other things to take other media organizations off of your platform that hurt my chances of getting reelected. No, they don't. They've got no responsibility to anyone other than themselves. You're a politician. You freaking figure it out. If you think our democracy is in danger, well then, don't we pay you to do something about that? Do your freaking job.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So it actually happened yesterday. The Mets pulled it out. The Mets won one. Now, you may or may not be a Mets fan. I'm going to go out and let me guess. There's a very good chance you're not. Because, well, Mets fans seem to have somewhat dried up this season. They're having the absolute worst season. This is a disastrous season. It's got record-breakingly bad numbers of losses in it. I think it was the worst June in the history of the Mets franchise. Yeah. It's not easy being a Mets fan. It's not easy being the Mets. Anything to do with the Mets is not easy this year. Except for, losing. They seem to do that easy breezy. They find new ways to lose all the time. They find a new way to blow a lead all the time. However, they came close to blowing the lead in yesterday's game, which was essentially a fight for the bottom against the Cincinnati Reds. But they didn't. They won 4-6. And I think the score was like 1-6. I can't really remember, but it was 1-6 at one point. And all of a sudden the crowd like, who blows a 5-run lead? The Mets. Oh, of course. Who are we talking about? But they didn't. I love my Mets. I love my Mets when they win. I love my Mets when they lose. I love my Mets. There's no two ways about it. I mean, look, what are you going to do? You got to be a Yankees fan? Who was it? I think it was Doug Stanhope that said being a Yankees fan is like going to a casino and cheering for the house. And I kind of feel the same way. It's just not interesting. And it's not like you have a choice. If I'd been born a Yankees fan, if I had an emotional response to the Yankees winning, I would be a Yankees fan. But I'm not. I got bit by the Mets bug when I was 6 years old. I was watching TV with my dad, who, as it turns out, is a Yankee fan. But I grew up in England, and my bonding was with my dad. My bonding was with my father through baseball. And we would play catch. My dad traveled a lot for work. He was away many days of the year. But when he came home, we would go out in the yard and we'd play catch. And man, if I ever have a kid, I look forward to playing catch with them. It's interesting. Do you know anything about the idea of transcendental meditation? I know very little about it. But I think the idea is you engage in an activity that takes your mind off of your mind, basically. The idea of transcendental meditation, I think, as practiced by the Maharishi Yogi and David Lynch and the Beatles and Howard Stern and all these different people, Jerry Seinfeld. The idea is you get a mantra and you don't necessarily know what it means, but you say it over and over again. And in doing so, it takes your mind off of your mind. It's sort of an activity, a word, a repetitive phrase that frees up your mind to truly relax and let go of all the day's stresses. And this is my very, very limited understanding of it. But playing catch is sort of like that with your kid, I think. And maybe it's like that with, anyone you play catch with. Really, you're doing this repetitive thing, which is throwing the ball back and forth. But that somehow frees up the shackles of your mind where it starts going interesting places and you start having conversations, you start having talks. And, well, there was real developmental learning stuff that happened between me and my father while we were just playing catch. Maybe you had a similar situation with your dad or your mom or whoever you played catch with growing up, your friend, I don't know. But there's some real growth. There's some real emotional, spiritual letting go that happens during a game of catch. And so it's a beautiful thing. And that was my bond with my father. Baseball. Or one of them anyway. And so there I am, 6 years old, and it's a World Series, and my dad lets me stay up. 1986. The legendary World Series between the Mets and the Red Sox. And like I said, my dad's a Yankee fan, but I've grown up mostly in England. I didn't get that time to form an allegiance to a baseball team. All I know is that I'm being allowed to stay up late because the time difference was crazy. So staying up to watch the World Series live on English television, that was a special treat for me. I got to stay up late with my father watching baseball. And I knew that we were from New York. And there's a New York team. So I'm sort of rooting for the New York team, as one does in these situations. And it becomes what was at the time and what may still be the single greatest World Series in the history of World Series. You've probably seen a million documentaries on it. I don't need to break it down for you play by play, but it was a big deal. And that anchored it in. I was a Mets fan then, and I would always be a Mets fan, and that didn't wash out. There's no way I could do anything about it. I like baseball. I love baseball. But there's never been another team, except for perhaps the Houston Astros, because I spent a decade in Houston. And, a team has a chance to get under your skin in those situations. And, I very much related to the Astros when I first moved to Houston from New York City because I was like, they both wear a lot of orange. They both became teams at the same year, and they both suck. When I got to Houston, I turned on sports and saw that said, in sports tonight, the Astros find a new way to lose. I was like, I kind of relate to this. So I developed some sort of emotional response to the Astros. I love the Astros, but being a Mets fan, that never washes out. It's not something that I chose. It's something that happened to me. I was suckered in. Thanks to the greatest World Series of all time when I was like 5-6 years old. And, well, it's been a legendarily lousy Mets season. Here's the thing, though. Well, first and foremost, did you know that Mets fans have been offered free therapy by the mental health marketplace? Yeah, I suppose I should have gotten to that first. Mets fans are offered free therapy by the mental health marketplace. The New York Mets, they're a mess, but it does come with, free resources at fans' disposal to deal with the team's descent into the National League East cellar. According to the Associated Press via ESPN.com, online health marketplace UMA Health is offering free confidential therapy sessions to Mets fans looking to vent about the team's woes. The goal, according to UMA, is to bring attention to the important role of therapy and eliminate the stigma of going to a therapist. And you know what? That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. You and I talk about this a lot. There's no shame ever in asking for help. In fact, with the amount of stigma that is attached to asking for help, often it takes a significant amount of bravery and gathering of yourself to put yourself in that situation. So I applaud what they're doing. I get it. I get that they're using the idea of free therapy to express the fact that there's no shame in asking for help, and that's a good thing. But you know what? I was thinking about this, and whether you're a Mets fan or not, whether you're a baseball fan or not, I realized that as much as the vast majority of the other Mets fans that I know have their head in their hands and are just interminably depressed about the season, and I am too, by the way. Man, I went to that game in San Diego. Oh, the Mets looked like a sure thing. They were on like an 11-game winning streak when I went to see them. And I saw them when the wheels came off. I was all excited because I've got great memories with the Mets and San Diego. I went and saw Bartolo Colon hit his only home run in San Diego, a game that the Mets won, a game that, well, happened on what was one of the best days of my life. That's another experience that I'll never wash out. I was going through a lot at the time, and, well, when I needed the Mets to be a healing thing, they were a healing thing. So I was very excited. I had literally the best seats I have ever had to any baseball game. I wasn't right behind home plate, but I was about 10 rows back. It was unreal. I got chills walking into Petco Park, getting ready to watch my Mets, knowing that they would be so close. It was everything to me. And I had a ringside seat for one of the worst beatings they've ever taken. And that was where the wheels came off the Mets season. I was up close and personal to watch it all go horribly wrong for them against the Padres. They were blowing out something like 12-4. It was bad news. People could see me on TV. I was getting text messages from folks being like, take your head out of your hands. You're depressing us. We're watching you on TV. That's how good my seats are, that people could see my depression on television. Anyways, it hasn't been a good season. But you know what? It's one of those things that makes me grateful. Because yesterday the Mets won. They pulled it out. It looked like they were going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory at the last moment and blow another massive lead, but they didn't. They held on to it. Beat the Cincinnati Reds, and this is not a significant victory, but beat the Cincinnati Reds 6-4. And you know what? I enjoyed every second of it. Even when I thought they were going to blow the lead, I enjoyed every second of it. When someone gets a hit, when someone gets on base, I enjoy that. And, you know, I realize there's a tremendously valuable life lesson. I don't go to therapy for the problems I've got with my Mets. I feel like my Mets have made me a stronger, better person. It's not just because I've become hardened and cynical in the wake of their constant defeat and failure this season. It's not just because it's been a very difficult thing being a Mets fan for my entire life. I think the thing that's beautiful and magical about being a fan of anything like the Mets is that it really teaches you something very important. I think baseball teaches you this in general. I mean, look, Babe Ruth, home run king, strikeout king. But it teaches you something very valuable. And that is, well, like I said, when someone gets on base, I enjoy that. When someone makes a catch, I enjoy that. When things go well, I enjoy that. And I don't allow a lost season or a team that will maybe have nothing but lost seasons until I pass away, an eventuality I've been preparing myself for. I don't let that get in the way of me enjoying it when Brandon Nimmo gets a hit. I don't let that get in the way of me enjoying it when Wilmer Flores hits the walk-off. It doesn't matter that the season is dead and buried. It doesn't matter that nothing seems to ever go right for the Mets, and maybe nothing ever will. I'll always enjoy it when they do well. They're my happy place. Is it devastating when things go badly for them? Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a true fan. I love them when they win. I love them when they lose. I just love my Mets. But it still hurts. It still stings when things go horribly wrong for them. But that's the thing. That's the magical thing that I think I've learned from being a New York Mets fan. And that's something that you, me, all of us can carry with us forever. And that is the fact that, well, you don't want to let the lousy times get in the way of you enjoying the things that there are to be enjoyed. Life's like that. Life's a series of ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. It's peaks and valleys. It's disappointment. It's heartbreak. And then it's triumph and success and victory. Big wins, little wins, all of it. It's all part of life. I think that's what I've learned. I think that's what I've learned out of being a Mets fan. Is that you suffer what there is to suffer. You enjoy what there is to enjoy. And you make your way in the world, keeping your head high, making sure that no matter how lousy things have gone for the rest of the season, that is your life recently, when something good and something positive happens, even if it's a hit in a losing game, you allow yourself to enjoy that. And you know what? Interestingly enough, I think that's a real secret to winning. Even when life is stacking up loss after loss. Appreciating that which is good. Finding the good, the positive. Even the most dark and dismal of situations. That, my friend, like I said, is winning even when you're losing. And so for that reason, in what could be one of the most desperately lousy seasons since I became a fan 6 years ago, at the age of 6 years old in the year 1986. For that reason, I'd like to thank my New York Mets for making me the person that I am. And, well, if you've got a losing team, it'd be great to see them win. And maybe one day they will. But if you've got a losing team, understand this. If you can really appreciate and find the joy in being a fan, well, you, my friend, will have mastered a very important part of life. So whoever your version of the Mets is, whatever your version of the Mets is, be grateful. Love them when they win. Love them when they lose. Let's go, Mets.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So, you know, Amish Uber is now a thing? Yes, Amish Uber. Now, if you're like me, the first thing that you think when you hear about the existence of Amish Uber is, how do you summon one to your home or wherever you are to pick you up? Only it seems like because the Uber is Amish, well, you could imagine that it would be a cart and buggy, but the idea of a smartphone coming into the equation seems a little improbable. There's an interesting workaround for that. And because you and I tackle big and important issues around here, you and I will discuss exactly what the deal is with Amish Uber in just a little bit. Right now, though, I wanted to dig into some of the questions that you've been sending me. You can hit me up if you have a question, a comment, a query at ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me ad@iheartradio.com. But I've gotten some good ones recently, like this one. You can bring two bands that mainly toured before 1990 to play a private show at your place. Which ones would they be? If you could bring back two bands that mainly toured before 1990 to play private shows at your place, which ones would they be? Well, my favorite bands of all time are, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In at number one, with a hot foot, Beastie Boys. Always has been, always will be. Now, I've seen Beastie Boys many, many times, and I feel very lucky that I've seen Beastie Boys many times. I never saw them before the year 1990. However, because I've seen them so many times before, I don't know if they would be on that list, because my Beastie Boys concert going experiences were some of the most perfect things that ever happened to me. And, well, I don't necessarily feel I would want to mess with that by adding another show in. But my other favorite band is the Police, and I never got a chance to see the Police. Even when the Police reformed, I didn't get a chance to see them. I mean, they were over and done with long before I was going to concerts and things like that the first time out. And you would think, right? You would think that me being radio guy, I would have a hookup for when Police came to town and played their big reunion tour, their once-in-a-lifetime reunion tour. Not so much. Couldn't get tickets, didn't go. It's a thorn in my side. It's been a thorn in my side ever since then, and it's turned into a festering carbuncle of regret. So I would have to say that the Police would definitely be one of them. I would love to see the Police play live. And another band that toured mainly before 1990, probably Black Flag. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that I'm a big Black Flag fan and also a big fan of the work of Henry Rollins. So it would be Rollins era Black Flag and the Police. If I could get two bands that toured together mainly before the year 1990 to play private shows at my home, it would be the Police and Henry Rollins era Black Flag. Yep, that's my answer. Good question. I got another one. I know you know tons of music behind the music trivia, but what about movies? Actually, I'm not really a big movie guy. My AD is more than just a clever nickname. My ADD makes sitting through the whole thing, an entire movie, really sort of difficult. Like, I like to watch movies in bits and pieces, so I prefer to watch them at home, and even then, I've always been more of a fan of episodic stuff. Half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, take a break, go on to the next one. Like the advent of things like Netflix and Hulu and things of that nature, binge watching, man, that really suits me a lot better. I could easily binge watch hours of television because I could stop and do things and take little breaks. But the idea of, hey, you're going to sit down and you're going to watch a movie and it's going to be 2 hours of your life and you won't move, it's never been a thing. So I'm actually not a big movie guy, and I know very little about movies and trivia. Like, if there's a movie trivia competition, you do not want me on your team. That's not a big thing for me. Are you good at Mortal Kombat? No. I suck at video games. My best friend growing up and now was actually one of the top ranked Street Fighter players in the world. And he was very good at every single video game. And I would go over to his house to play video games and he would crush me at everything and just absolutely destroy me before I had a chance to learn. So I never got to be any good. So there's that. This is I think probably the one that I wanted to answer the most because it's an important one. How do you stay in such a good, positive space? You've got such great energy. Well, I'm flattered that you think I do. I'm flattered that you think I'm positive and I stay in such a good space and I have a good energy. That is something that I have worked on. And the reason I have worked on it is because, like a lot of people, I've dealt with pretty severe depression off and on for most of my life. Like a lot of people. I don't think it makes me different or more interesting than other people the way a lot of people seem to feel about depression. It's not something that's fun. It's not something that I ever want to go through if I can avoid it. But because I've dealt with it for most of my life, in treating it, I've discovered the things that do actually keep me positive. And, well, these things are gratitude. Gratitude will keep me positive. Being of service to others. Look, this is what I love about radio. what I love about radio is hopefully I get a chance to keep you company. Hopefully I get a chance to entertain you. Hopefully the way radio works, I get a chance to entertain you and maybe make your commute or whatever it is a little bit more easy and a little bit more bearable. And so that's one of the things I love about radio. I really kind of feel as though, I'm not saying I'm performing a service because that sounds very self-aggrandizing, but if I can help you get through a difficult part of your day or keep you company when you need it, that's my little way of trying to leave the world a bit better than I found it. And so that's what I keep in mind when I'm on the air. Gratitude and being of service. I'm very lucky to do this, and I'm filled with gratitude that I get to do this. And I find that gratitude and being of service to others, these are two things that help you stay in a very positive space, at least for me personally. At least that's what I found as I've battled battled is such an overly dramatic word, as I've dealt with depression all my life. I've kind of got it dialed in, the things that will help me dial back the depression. And positivity, it tends to be a result of gratitude and being of service to others. Then the other very important thing is exercise. Man, just sweating every now and then. I try to, in some way, shape, or form every day. That just changes so many things. My shrink at one time told me that I had a choice, and that choice was he could either medicate me or I could agree to exercise. And I was like, oh, exercise. I'll take the medication, please. And I wound up opting for the exercise for one very important reason, which, let's you and I talk about it next.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So, you have been sending me some excellent questions, and I'll get to as many of them as I can on the air. Keep them coming. At ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me, ad@iheartradio.com. And you and I started to talk about this a bit before, but I want to make sure we kind of finish up on this one because it's sort of an important one. I got the question, how do you stay in such a positive space? You've got such good energy. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you so much for that. Not only because it's a great compliment that, I've got a positive, good energy, but also because that's something I've worked at really hard. Only because, like a lot of people, this is not something that makes me unique or interesting or anything like that, but like a lot of people, I've dealt with severe depression off and on for most of my life, as a child, as an adult. And, the thing about it is that you can't control it, but you do kind of learn over time how it's best treated. And in treating this depression, I've discovered the things that keep me positive. And these are things like gratitude. Having an attitude of gratitude will always keep me more positive. And then being of service to others. That's a really big one. It sort of makes you kind of put your mind aside. The gremlins of my mind, as I call them, that kind of eke their way in there when I am going through depression. Well, there's nothing that makes them sort of dissipate in the same way that helping others does. It sort of helps you not focus on yourself. And focusing on others is, a great way to make yourself feel good because, you're performing something of value, you're being of service, but it's also a great way to take your mind off of your own troubles. And look, there's some troubles that are real troubles and you can't ignore them. You can't ignore things like bills that you can't afford to pay. You can't afford things like illnesses that must be treated. All that sort of stuff is very real. And I'm not saying ignore those things. But when you are dealing with depression, there is tremendous value if you can pick yourself up off the couch or get out of bed, because this is not always possible, in helping others, being of service to others. And, I think this is one of the things that I love so much about radio. I'm not saying that I'm performing a service by being on the radio, but this is the way I see radio. Radio to me was always something that kept me company when I needed company. not necessarily the most social guy. I mean, I like going out. I like being around people, but it's not my favorite thing to do. But sometimes you want that sort of interaction. You want some sort of contact. And when I was a kid growing up, and still as an adult today, the radio was just enough. When I needed company, the radio was just enough to keep me company. So that's how I see radio. And also, radio helps you get through tougher parts of the day, commutes, sitting in traffic, things of that nature. When you're working, radio is there for you. Radio is a unique thing. As broadcast television has fallen off massively, radio and audio continues to grow. And I think a big part of that is, well, I don't know what you're doing while you're listening to this show, but I'm guessing you're not sitting there staring at your radio. It's not like the old days when you gather around the wireless. People listen to the radio when they're in the car, going places, doing things, working. And so what I'm doing is sort of, in my mind, keeping you company. Keeping you company when you need some company. Keeping you company when you need the monotony broken up. Keeping you company when, well, you need a laugh or a smile or music or conversation to help you get through what it is you're dealing with. That could be a massive traffic jam on the way home. That could be an unpleasant task you have to perform around the house or at work. But I'm here kind of trying to help you get through it in a little bit of an easy manner. And that's where I guess kind of the idea of being of service to other and radio kind of being of service to others and being in radio sort of tie together. It's my little way of trying to leave the world a little bit better than I find it. If I can make your commute easier, if I can make some heinous task go a little bit quicker, well, then I'm doing my job. And that's, I think, big part of what attracts me to radio in general. It's a chance to, in my own little way, be of service to others. The other things that I think help me stay in a positive space, and this is not a magic bullet. It doesn't work every single time. Like I said, have dealt with depression off and on my entire life, but if I can summon up the energy and remember what it is that's going to help me beat the depression and then take action, well, these things are really good too. And exercise. Exercise is a big one. Years ago, I was going to a shrink, and he was like, all right, you're depressed. So I was like, tell me something I don't know. He's like, I've got two options for you. I was like, okay. He's like, I could medicate you or you could exercise. I was like, oh, I'll take the medication, please. That sounds much easier. And he's like, here's the thing. I've heard your show. And, well, do you think that your show would be damaged if your personality was changed? Medication could change your personality. How do you think it would be for you if your personality was changed? I was like, oh gosh, actually the personality is sort of the thing that pays the mortgage and the car note. So I can't have anything messing with my personality. He was like, then please just try exercise. And he explained to me, and this is something we've talked about on the show a little bit in the past, but it bears repeating. He explained to me that exercise to the point of sweat, like 20 minutes or so, that will basically unlock a lot of the chemicals in your body naturally that you'll find in your standard serotonin reuptake inhibitor like Prozac or something like that. Like you could take Prozac or you could get on the treadmill and sweat for 20 minutes. And it does a lot of the same stuff. And I have to tell you, I stepped out of the gym for 4 years. I got this promotion and I went from being a guy who exercised regularly, a little bit of a gym rat, to being someone who never set foot in a gym ever. And man, it happened little bit by little bit over time. But depression really started to creep back in until this past Christmas just gone by. I basically gave myself a present. Big part of the reason why I stepped out of the gym was I got a promotion. I became the manager of this big rock station, and I was also on, still am on like 25 other stations. So it's a long day, and I was living literally at the radio station and in the studio. And so what I did was I gave myself the Christmas present of a studio at my home. And that allows me to do a bunch of work from home, and that allows me to go to the gym. I don't have to take Millhouse to work with me every single day so I can walk him. I can work from home, then head to the studio for a little bit, then head back home, walk Millhouse, have some dinner, then go to the gym for a second. And it's made such a tremendous difference. The other part of the reason why I got into the gym was because I saw a picture of myself, and it wasn't like I saw a picture of myself and I gotten fat. It was like I saw a picture of myself and I looked like I was about to die. I looked really unhealthy. I looked starved for oxygen. Maybe it was the lighting, but I just remember looking at myself going, that looks really bad. I got to do something. So, I got back into the gym to combat things, to make some physical and mental changes. And the physical changes, obviously, with exercise, is not like you're going to do a crunch and you're going to look and feel completely different. No, that stuff all takes time. But I can tell you that the mental changes that come with exercise, man, those happened overnight. Absolutely overnight. Like, I lifted some weights, not especially heavy because I've been out of the gym for a really long time. I did a little bit of time on the treadmill, nothing too crazy, but man, I felt like a different human being leaving the gym, and I woke up feeling like a different human being. So that's a big part of staying in a positive mental space, I suppose. Gratitude, being of service to others, exercise, and well, finally, I wanted to talk about dogs or animals in general. Millhouse, my puppy, man, that little guy gets me through the high times, the low times, and all the times in between. He makes me laugh and smile so many times every single day. He's the absolute greatest. If I ever seem stressed out, he knows. Dogs are more in tune with human emotion. This is a scientifically proven fact. Dogs are more in tune with human emotion than any other animal in the world, including monkeys, apes, gorillas, things like that are supposed to be more closely related to us. Dogs are more in touch with human emotion than those. They really are scientifically proven to be man's best friend. So I would add that to the list of things that help me keep anyway, a sort of positive mental attitude. Got that PMA, as my friends in the hardcore community would say. So gratitude, being of service to others, exercise, and dogs too. And it's interesting. It kind of brings us to our final story of the day. There's a new study that provides even more proof that your pets really do make you happier. Most pet owners are going to tell you that having a pet makes them happier. They don't need scientific proof. It's just obvious. But you know what? Why not? There's some new science to back it up anyway, and it's kind of fascinating. Researchers polled 2,000 people over the age of 55. Half of them had at least one cat or dog, and the other half didn't have pets whatsoever. And you know what? The ones who did have pets were apparently twice as likely to consider themselves a success in life. Yeah, if you have a pet, you're twice as likely to consider yourself a success in life. The ones with pets, also more likely to be happily married, more likely to have kids, more likely to volunteer. Oh, seriously, there's that thing. Volunteering, giving to others, being of service to others, leading to happiness. It came up in this study too. More likely to have a college degree and more likely to have a job that they like. And they make, on average, and I know you probably put a lot of this back into your pet, but a person with a pet makes, on average, about $5,000 more per year than somebody without a pet. It's good stuff, right? They also got twice as much exercise as people who don't have pets. I mean, a big part of having a dog is you got to walk a dog. But 90% of people with pets say they think it's good for their health and it's good for their well-being, and 31% say that it adds purpose and meaning to their life. And here's the thing, though. That thing of meaning and purpose, man, I don't know where you first got your sense of meaning and purpose, but it all changed. The world completely changed for me when I got my first dog as an adult. I'd had a dog as a kid, and man, I love that thing. I love Wilfer more than anything ever. He was the absolute greatest, as all dogs are, especially to a kid. Man, there's something magical about the combination of dogs and kids. It's truly wonderful, beautiful thing. But as an adult, when I got my first dog, Bud, the Cocker Spaniel, I'd been living this sort of devil-may-care, guy in a band, on the road, sort of messy, sloppy existence. And something about that dog, Bud, the Cocker Spaniel, him doing all the things that a dog does, loving me, caring for me, being there when I need him, just wanting to be a friend. Something about that centered me and made me happy. And something about being responsible to something, to someone else, being responsible to this dog, having his life in my hands. Man, that just changed my perspective and made me sort of refocus and understand what was important in this world. And there's that thing about a dog. All it wants is to love you and be your friend. And for that reason, I think a dog will teach you about love. They come into our lives to teach us about love. So there you go. I spent a little bit more time talking about this, but it's important. My secret? It's not really a secret, but what I think helps me keep up a positive attitude, good energy, well, those are gratitude, being of service to others, exercise, and dogs. Have an awesome one.